and welcome to SKANLA Let's Talk Diabetes. My name is Ethne McFarlane and I'm the chair of SKANLA, St Kitts and Nevis London Association. We are St Kitts and Nevis London Association, started in 2015 by a group of nationals who saw a need for a meeting place for families and friends to connect with other nationals and our local community by sharing food, stories, and our experience here and in the Federation of St Kitts and Nevis. We are not-for-profit members organisation with a management team of trustees and valued volunteers. Funds are raised through membership fees, fundraising, and donation. Gifts. Members are drawn from nationals of St Kitts and Nevis, local and the wider community. We hold social events, fundraising and celebrations throughout the year and periodical members meeting. Moving forward, we'll be hosting seminars and workshops around health issues that affect our community and the help and support available to them and how to access it. We are working towards setting up luncheon clubs and activities to meet the needs of our aging community who are experiencing loneliness and isolation, which impacts on their health and well-being. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to the management team of SKANLA. Vice Chair of SKANLA is Clovis Bryant.
Hi, everyone.
Secretary, Sonia Dowell.
Hi, good morning, good evening, everyone.
And the treasurers are Tony Benjamin and Sandra Bryant.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Okay. If you would like more information on SKANLA, you can contact us by email and that will come up shortly, the email address. It's ethne.skanla@gmail.com. And thank you. I would like to pass you on now to our host for the evening, which is Patricia Walton. On to you, Patricia. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome. I am super excited to be hosting this evening's event. I want to say a big thank you to Ethne, the chair, who has just given a great introduction to the trustees of the St Kitts and Nevis London Association. So I'm really excited to be here. As was said, I am the host for the evening. I am a radio presenter for the Chalkhill Community radio station, and I will be hosting this evening's event and introducing you to all of our fabulous guests that we have with us tonight. I also want to introduce you to Shez Christopher, who is the fantastic admin who stepped in at last minute. So thank you very much to Shez for stepping in. We've got an amazing lineup, and we might also be joined by some of our fellow Kittitians and Nevisians from across the water. For them, it's afternoon, and for us, it's evening. So you heard Sonia say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So wherever you're from, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You are all very, very welcome. I just want to point out a couple of things, a few housekeeping things before we proceed with the evening. The event today is being recorded so that you can have an opportunity to share the great experience with friends and family, or an opportunity for you to play it back if you're not able to stay to the end, or you want to remind yourself of some of the discussion this evening. Because there's likely to be quite a few people on the call, we're going to ask people to post their questions into the chat box. So I'm hoping everyone knows how to do that. write your questions in the chat box, and between myself and Shez, we will do our best to answer those questions. So there's going to be a slot for questions and answers at the end of each speaker this evening. If, however, the speaker's gone and something comes back to you and you think, actually, I'd quite like to answer that, you can still do that. So tonight is all about diabetes. It's a really important topic. It's one that affects so many of us. We're going to speak to somebody who knows all about that and who's managed to be known as the inspired diabetic. So make sure you stay tuned to find out how he got that name. I'm looking forward to the answer to that question. And a bit later on, we're going to have a presentation from Natasha Carayol, who's going to be talking about the all importance of making sure that you have the right health insurance to take care of yourself. But she's the expert on that, so I'll leave her to tell you a bit more about that. Towards the end of the evening, we're hoping to have Reginald O'Loughlin, who is a GP for more than 34 years, who does lots of work in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis around diabetes. So without further ado, a bit later, I will be posting the email address for SKANLA Association. So look out for that in the chat. But I now want you to join me in a very, very warm welcome to somebody who I have become so fond of. I've had the pleasure of meeting him and interviewing him before. He is absolutely magnificent, which is why I'm so excited about introducing him to you. So can you now join me in welcoming to our virtual stage, of course, because it is by Zoom, Lyndon Wissart, who also goes by the name of the Inspired Diabetic. Lyndon, welcome and good evening. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening to you as well, Trisha. Thank you very much for having me on this event this evening. It's an honor and a privilege. The Inspired Diabetic, eh?
Yeah, the Inspired Diabetic. But before we find out why you were called the Inspired Diabetic, just tell us a little bit about your background. Who is Lyndon Wissart?
Well, Lyndon Wissart is a parent of Jamaican descent. I was born in Hackney. I grew up in Tottenham all my life. I've been a chef for over 30 years, working in different establishments, hotels, restaurants, banqueting, private events. The top of my list is doing private events for celebrities and also working at Savoy Hotel. And in October 2015, my life changed when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
So Lyndon, just before we go right to the crux of your story, let's just have a little conversation about what was your health like before this diagnosis in 2015?
Well, what my health was like, I thought I was doing all right, you know, because as a chef, you're living your life. You don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. But I had issues with my body for over a year, which I didn't deal with. And this is a common thing for a lot of men, you know. So
what were some of those issues?
I had blurred vision, I had pains in my stomach, I had blood in my stool, I was overweight, I had pins and needles in my feet, my fingers. I was running to the toilet on a regular basis. And, you know, I just was not feeling good. I just was not feeling myself. My mental state was not focused. Like the day that I was diagnosed, and I kind of relapsed, to be honest with you. And I was working on a calculator, and the calculator is 99.9% right. And I'm adding up 1 and 1 on a calculator, and it's giving me like 3 and 3 is like 9. 6. It was all over the place. It was my mind just wasn't there.
Did you think it was something to do with the calculator? Did you think the calculator wasn't working?
I thought it was. I thought something's not right, but I didn't want to blame the calculator. You know, I just didn't know, and then I had so many things going wrong with me, but I didn't know the answers. I didn't know the solutions. I didn't know what diabetes was when I was diagnosed, but I tried to deal with it in my own way, in my own funny way. I know a lot of men would understand what I'm saying.
But
You
can
know,
I ask you, you had so many things that you mentioned at the start of the conversation. Was it that there were things that you noticed, but you didn't really think they were significant kind of on their own, but collectively maybe so?
yeah, well, for example, I had blood in my stool for over a year. Okay. I did nothing about it. It came and it went. It came and it went, you know, and I thought I'd just deal with it. I went to my mother's house one day and my mum said to me, Lyndon, your belly will get big. I said, Mum, what do you mean my belly will get big? She said, Lyndon, look upon you. Your belly will get big, man. You know, and I said, Mum, but I'm the baby of the family. How can you talk to me like that? You know, but my mum's Jamaican. She tells me as it was. And what I done, Patricia, I went home, I looked in the mirror and I thought, boy, my mum's right. You know,
Had you not
and my
noticed
mum,
it before?
no, you know why I didn't notice it before? Because my mum said to me, pigs don't know when pigs stink. Yeah. So when you're in an environment, yeah, you don't realize it.
That is
You know,
true.
you're around with somebody.
I like that statement. I think much of us can relate to that, or
Yeah.
a very similar one.
It's like sometimes you may meet a person who's got bad breath, but you got bad breath. So you don't tell them, you know, and like me, I had a big stomach. So some of my other friends I was hanging around with had big stomach as well. So it was like normal.
So tell me, Lyndon, you're a chef. What was
Yeah.
your day like as a chef? You have food around you all day. Tell us about that.
If I'm cooking a meal for you, Patricia, yeah, okay. When that meal hits your plate and it goes into your mouth, you want to make sure that tastes nice, yeah, okay. Otherwise, you're going to complain.
So
Yeah,
you're
okay.
tasting the food.
We tasting the food. Don't forget, we have to taste the sauces. Yeah, okay. Whatever we're cooking, we have to taste certain things a certain amount of times before we get it right. It's like a basic white sauce or basic red sauce, a cream sauce, anything like that. If there's a specific sauce that a client wants and that client's paying for it, you have to make sure it's right before it gets. You're going to probably taste the sauce maybe 5 to 10 times before you're happy with it. And don't forget, when you're with certain sauces, once it's cooled down, the flavor changes as well. Yeah, the structure changes. So you have to have that in mind as well. The consistency, you know.
I think
So
for parents on the call, that's quite an important thing, because I know as a parent myself, I taste my children's food to make sure it wasn't too hot or too sweet. And so I'd be often tasting food. So as a chef,
yeah,
and that's your role, you were tasting food all day.
all day, and that was normal, and that was normal. After a certain time, you're cutting certain foods, you're doing certain things, and you can smell it, and you can smell. Okay, I got an idea of how it's going to taste. You don't have to taste it that often. You know, there's certain sauces you can smell. Oh, that smells good. And you know, once you know it's got a good smell to it, you say, okay, I know that's going to taste nice. You know that, and that's a built-in feeling that we have as chefs. But as chefs, 9 times out of 10, we're cooking for clients that we're cooking a healthy meal for the client. You know, and once you're cooking a healthy meal for a client, we don't replicate that in our own personal life sometimes. Not unless
Sure.
not unless you're a very health freak and you're doing it all the time. Don't forget, sometimes you're working in an environment where you're cooking chips all day sometimes, you know? So you see a chip there, too many on the plate. And it's funny, I've been working in the kitchen and said, oh, that's too much for the customer. So somebody takes one and
So
tries
you
one.
take some.
Yes, you take
Lyndon,
one.
you've got an interesting story about cakes, and in particular lemon curd. Sorry, Lyndon, before you continue, can I ask all of the attendees to go on mute, because then that makes it easier for other people to hear. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. So, Lyndon, tell us about cakes. Cakes are one of my favorite things, not good for me,
Okay.
but nonetheless.
I'm going to tell you about cake. And the reason why I'm going to tell you about cake, yeah, all right? Funny you should mention it, yeah? This is from my book, yeah, The Inspired Diabetic, yeah, okay? Page 70, yeah? I got 4 sizes of lemon tarts in there, yeah, okay? I could see some people looking. I could see Tony. Tony, which one you going to pick? Yeah, the top one, yeah? Yeah? We normally go for the biggest one, yeah? But the thing about it, from the biggest one down to the smallest one, they taste exactly the same. They taste exactly the same. So you don't need to have a big piece of cake. You can have a small one and it'll taste just the same. And when you have a small one, you're rewarding yourself. It's a reward after you've achieved certain things, when you start to reverse your diabetes or you've eaten healthy for a week or so. Yeah. So it's a mindset when you think, boy, you see that big one? That's my one. Nobody touched that. That's what we say. That big one is mine.
You're going to have
You
the
know?
big one.
We're going to have the big one.
So Lyndon, so you've spoken about the tart, but there's a really interesting story that you tell about when you're preparing cakes and the precision as a chef, how you need to get the cake sizes precise and what you did in order to do that. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
When you used to cut the cake, what did you do with the bits that you weren't going to use? Your secret's out
giving
now.
away two secrets answer. Okay, so I was working in the kitchen. I was working in the pastry section, yeah, and it was rugby World Cup, and every day we'll be cutting cakes. So, for example, we'd have a cake about that size, yeah, okay, but each portion of cake had to be the same size. So what we do to get the right size, we have to cut the edges. We have to trim the edges, yeah, and all those trimmings were going to a bowl in front of me. Yeah.
What would you do?
So
with that
I'll be cutting about 10 different types of cakes in the morning, about 5 or 6 different types of brownies, and I'll be putting them in a bowl. So that's my zone. So I'll be eating, yeah. I'll have a cup of tea or coffee with me, yeah, eating the cake. But the thing about it, you try one, it's like an addiction. It goes in, and then you think, oh, I'm gonna have another one. I'm gonna have another one. I'm gonna have another one. And when you say, oh, I'm gonna stop, I'll have one more. So all the trimmings will just be eating them. And this is normal. It's just like when you're a child, when you're the parents or your mother or your father, they're cooking up a cake, yeah, in the kitchen. And what do you want to do? Put your finger in that bowl to get that taste.
Absolutely, absolutely. Lyndon, I wanted you to tell that story because whilst I'm not medically trained in anything at all, I just wanted you to tell that story because it's so important, I think, for us as listeners to kind of think about the things that we do on a day-to-day basis that impacts our health without us even realizing. So eating your children's leftovers, shaping, for those people that might be in the cake industry, eating the edges of the cake, eating the uncooked cake, tasting the, you know, the sugar coating at the end. And so it's just important for us to kind of think about how we eat on a regular basis.
100%, 100%. I mean, my typical day, let me just quickly run through a typical day for me.
If you could, that'd be great.
Okay. I didn't live in London, so I lived outside London, but I worked in London. So I drove. So I had to get up maybe 5 o'clock in the morning to get to London for about 7 o'clock so that I get a parking space. Yeah. So what I do, I prepare my breakfast, my car journey breakfast. I'd have 3 slices of hard-dough bread. Yeah. And you know what hard-dough bread is like, West Indian bread, nice and sweet and juicy. Yeah. And what I'll do, I'll put butter on it. Okay. And then I put jam on it. Yeah. And I'll take a bite out of it. If I took a bite out of it and I don't think there's enough jam on there, I thought, I'll put some more jam on it. Yeah. And then what I'd have, I got an addiction to coffee. I never drank coffee, but one day I started to drink coffee, but I wanted my coffee sweet and milky. And the only perfect thing that I can find was a latte, was a sachet one.
Sure.
Yeah. So the sachet one, it comes with milk in it, milk powder, and it comes sweet already. So all you got to do is pour milk on top of it if you want milk, or water, hot water. Yeah. So each morning would depend on how I was feeling, what I'd put onto it. But on top of that, I'd put 3 to 4 teaspoons of demerara sugar. Yeah.
Wow.
Demerara sugar. Why demerara sugar? Because brown sugar is healthier than white sugar. Yeah, right. Okay. And then on top of that,
3-4 spoonfuls.
Yeah, all 3-4 spoons in there. Yeah. And then on top of that, when it became summertime, yeah, I used to get itchy throat, runny nose, runny eyes. And I couldn't understand, why am I getting a cold at summertime? And I spoke to one of my friends about this one day. He said, Lyndon, you got hay fever.
Sure.
I said, what do you mean you got hay fever? I don't get hay fever. This is the same thing I've said. He said, Lyndon, look where you live. You live in a country. Yeah, there's lots of pollen around you. So you're going to get hay fever. So I decided to do some research on how to prevent myself from getting hay fever. And the best way to stop yourself getting hay fever is to buy local honey. Yeah. So where I live in the country, there's plenty farms around me. So I go to my local farm shop, and what do you have? They have a small jar of honey with a massive big price, you know, a big price, you know. And I thought to myself, how long am I going to be having this nice honey with a big
Yeah,
price?
sure, yeah.
So I thought to myself, I'll go to another shop, I buy a big bottle with a smaller price, yeah, but the quality is not the same. The quality is not the same. So I started to add honey to my tea, my coffee, my cereal, anything that I think I could put onion.
Lyndon,
I
is that
started to do
with,
that.
sorry, is that with the 3 or 4 spoonfuls of demerara sugar? You're putting honey on top of that or instead of?
Yes. On top of.
Wow.
On top of. So that was, I'll put it on top of. Yeah. So that's my journey to work in the morning in my car. Once I got into my car and I'm driving, I always had a pain in the side of my stomach. I always had this pain and I couldn't understand why. What's wrong with this? What's this pain? But once I got out of the car, went into work, I forgot about the pain. Yeah. And that was going on nearly every day. So once you
Sure.
don't feel the pain, you don't do nothing about it. Yeah. Once I got to work, yeah, like I just explained, Patricia, we're cutting the cakes. Yeah. And then at work, they're going to ask you, do you want another cup of tea? Do you want to have coffee? So I said, yeah. So I'll have my sugar and my honey in my coffee as well at work with my cakes. Yeah. At lunchtime, about 12:30, 1 o'clock, we're having lunch. We're going to have a carbohydrate, a pasta, rice, potato, a meat dish. Yeah. And when it's on a buffet, you're going to take what you want. Yeah.
Sure.
And then you won't, you know, we don't drink water. We're going to have a fizzy drink as well. We're going to have a fizzy drink. So after lunch, around 2 o'clock, 2:30, yeah, we're gonna have a tea break, coffee break. And what we're gonna have? I'm gonna have my same tea or coffee with the same amount of sugar and honey, yeah. And you can't have it by itself, so you got to have some cake with it as well, or some biscuits. That's normal, yeah. So cakes and biscuits. Because in the afternoon now, because I know I've got a journey to go home. If we finish around 4 o'clock, yeah, I'm gonna hit traffic. So it takes about 2 hours to get home. If I leave 5 o'clock, it's probably take about an hour and a half. Yeah. So what I would do, I would go to the local shop and get a free meal deal. Yeah, a free meal deal. I'll go and get a BLT sandwich. Yeah, a fizzy drink, a chocolate bar, or it may be a pack of crisps. One of them. Yeah, as a free meal deal. And I'll have that on my way home in the car. Yeah. And on my way home in the car now, I'm driving with my free meal deal. I could hear this noise go ka-ching, ching, ka-ching, ching. I thought, what's that noise? What's that noise? So I stop the car and I look in my boot. Oh man, my J2Os. I had cases of
Wow.
J2Os in my car. The reason why I had J2Os in car, because I had an addiction to J2O, because I used to go out with my friends to pubs and clubs, and I never used to drink alcohol. So I used to drink J2Os in the clubs and pubs, yeah? And then when I go to cash and carry as a chef, they got a big sign there, J2O case, £5.20. I'm in a pub, it's £2.50 for a bottle. So it makes sense to buy a case, doesn't it? A case of 6 or 12. So you buy the case. So I used to leave it in my car. And this is how the mind works. I'd open the boot. I'd have by that time, I'd have a bottle opener. I'd open one bottle at the boot and I'd drink one there and then. I don't know why. And then I'd take another bottle and put it into the car with me.
Sure.
Yeah, for the rest of my journey home. Yeah. On my way home now, I get home. And a lot of you guys know, if it's your wife, your partner, whoever it is, they've been cooking for you or there's a meal for you. And you turn around to them and say, listen, I'm not eating because I've been eating all day. They go, what, there's something wrong with my food? Or wrong with my food? You know why I'm eating? So I thought, okay,
And
I'll tell my wife, all
especially
right.
with you being a chef, that must be pretty difficult.
I'm telling you. But you know, the hardest thing, sometimes when you're a chef and your wife knows you're a chef, she wants to make sure the food that she's giving you is nice. It tastes nice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So I can't say to her, I'm not going to eat your food. She's going to say, is there something wrong with it? So I have to eat. So my wife's going to cook me a pasta, a rice, a potato. Yeah. And on my table, I got my favorite drinks, my ginger beer and my mango juice. Yeah.
Wow.
So after eating so while I'm eating my food, I'm having my drinks as well. Yeah. And then what do we do, guys, after that? We just We just turn the TV on. I'm going to watch some football. But are we watching football? We're going to sleep.
So the football was watching you.
TV.
Lyndon, I just want to talk. I
Exactly.
just want to raise a few points there because there are some interesting factors. You've mentioned sort of price and, you know, what you make decisions about. Okay, so that honey is good for me, but it's too small and it's too expensive, so I'm going to go cheap. You've also spoken about the J2Os. Well, J2Os are like $2.50, so I'm going to buy 12. And some of us shop like that because sometimes we don't have much money. Sometimes we just think it makes sense. But what you've described and what you're describing, actually, you sound like a bag of sugar, like a bag of walking sugar next to a bag of carbohydrates.
But it doesn't end there, though. It doesn't end there for the simple fact that after the wife nudges you and wake you up and say, Lyndon, come to bed, you say, okay, I'm coming up in a minute. You go to the kitchen, I'll have a drink before I go to bed. So you make yourself another cup of tea, yeah? And then what do? You look into the cupboard, and what's in the cupboard? Digestive biscuits. You know?
Wow.
So you take two or three of them out. Yeah, you sit down on the sofa, you're eating your tea, drinking your tea, eating your biscuit, and you think, I'll get a couple more. And next thing you know it, you've had the packet of digestive biscuit. And this is at night time, yeah? And the only reason I explain all this to you, yeah, is because when I was doing events, yeah, there's guys that would come up to me and say, Lyndon, geez, I was doing exactly the same thing, man. I said, what? I thought it was just me with my guilt. They said, Lyndon, boy, that biscuit you talk about, I know.
Yeah. And also,
I know what you're talking about.
I think, Lyndon, as we get older as well, we're less active and, you know, we don't burn off as much as we put on. And as you say, we now start to fall asleep in front of the TV because then we're tired.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. What I want to do now, Lyndon, I want to fast forward because time permitting, we've got some other guests as well. And we really want to hear how you became the inspired diabetic. So take us now, if you may, to 2015. You were talking about the calculator. Tell us about the day that you were diagnosed, or it first came to your mind that actually something really isn't right here. Take us to that day.
So that day is there. I got to work and I'm working on the calculator and nothing was going right. I wasn't feeling right. There's something that just wasn't right that morning with me. And I'm in my zone working out a recipe and I could hear this noise in the background. And there's a chef, he's making this joke and everybody's laughing around, but I wasn't laughing because I wasn't taking note. I was like in a cloud, yeah, my little bubble.
Sure.
And then he called my name. He said, Lyndon. So when somebody calls your name, you turn around, don't you? He kind of takes you out of that bubble. And he said, Lyndon, why are you not laughing at my jokes? I looked him straight in the eye. And you know, I just ran into the changing room. And I just fell on the floor. And I was crying like a baby. You know, I was crying like a baby because there was so much things going wrong with me. And I didn't deal with none of it. And the chef comes into the kitchen. Lyndon, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? So I told him, listen, I've got this issue, man. I've got the blood in the stool, the pains in the stomach. I just don't feel right. You know, I messed up some of the recipes, you know. And he said, Lyndon, you know something? You do one or two things now. You either pack up your knives and go home, or you go to the doctor, yeah, and get yourself sorted out. You do one of the two things. But I'm saying to you right now, you're not carrying on working today. So I thought to myself, you know, Lyndon, phone your doctor. Phone your doctor. So I thought, okay. So I ring the doctor. You know what happened to me when I rang the doctor?
No.
Somebody picked up the phone, Patricia. Somebody picked up the phone and I said, hello? They said, yeah, hello back. I thought, oh, wow, okay. I was waiting for an answer machine,
Sure.
a voicemail, yeah? And that person said to me, what can we do for you? I said, I'd like to book an appointment to the doctor. And they said, okay. I said, when would you like to come in? I said, when can I come in? And they said, oh, come in at 5:30 today. I said, pardon? Today? I was expecting 2 days, 3 days a week.
Sure.
They said, come in today. I said, wow, okay. So I packed my bags longest journey going home that day.
What was
Longest
going through
journey.
your mind, Lyndon, at that time? So you've gone to work, the joke's not funny, you've fallen on the floor, you've got pains in your side. Your friend said, pack up your knives and make a decision. Go home or go to the doctors. You've called the doctors, you've got through straight away. What was going through your mind on your way home?
The first thing I thought to myself, I'm not telling my wife this. I can't tell my wife I'm going doctor. I need to deal with this by myself. So I'm I'm driving on the motorway now. I'm thinking all the things that's been happening in my body, the pains, the eye problems, the mental state problems, the things that I totally forgot about, which I got wrong throughout the year, the recipes that I messed up, the foods that I overcooked, the foods that I undercooked, the things that wasn't right, my lifestyle at home, the things that I related to when I was angry, when I shouldn't have been angry, when I was reacting in the wrong way, all little things that I'm thinking I need to apologize for. Yeah, I started to think about, and that was my journey going home. And when I got to my doctor's surgery, I'm sitting there when I logged in, and I'm sitting there and I hear people's names being called, and I'm waiting for my name to be called. I'm sitting there saying, I can't do this. I'm going home. It's like my one foot was in the door going home, going out, and the other one was staying. And I'm saying, and just as I thought, I'm gonna go, they called my name. Just as I thought, I'm gonna go, I can't do this. They called my name. And when I went in to see the doctor, I said, what's the problem? What's your issues? So I told them all the things that's wrong with me. I said to them, they said to me, let's do a blood test with you. So first of all, they checked my stomach. So I told them about the pains in my stomach. Yeah. I told them about the blood in my stool, everything like that. And they said, we're going to send you a full scan to the hospital. But that's another story. Yeah. That's another horror story for me. Yeah. But when she said to me, let's do a pinprick blood test for you. So they've done a pinprick blood test on my finger. That pinprick blood test, blood glucose test was 15.9 and it's supposed to be 5. Yeah.
Wow.
That doctor said to me, that's very high. You might be diabetic. We're going to send you for the HbA1c blood test. Okay. So the following Monday, the following day, they sent me for a blood test, HbA1c. When I got the results through from that one, my HbA1c was 92 and it's supposed to be 42 and below. Yeah.
So your levels, not that we're medically trained, your levels were significantly higher than the medical professionals saying would have been a normal rate. And we do have—
I was in the danger zone.
Yeah, you're in danger. We do have Reginald O'Loughlin coming to join us shortly. Can I also remind you to put questions in the chat? Shez and myself are going to do our best to address those, because we're coming to kind of the close of Lyndon's section now, and we'd like you to type some questions in to the chat. You can see that he's free and frank with his conversation, so please don't forget to type into the chat. So Lyndon, you've had all these tests done now. So let's go forward a little bit to you've been diagnosed as diabetic. Tell us about the day when you got that news and how you then became the inspired diabetic.
When I got that news, the word diabetes didn't relate to me because I didn't know what it was. That's number one. Yeah. Okay. But what related to me when I looked at my doctor and the reaction of the face, that said to me there's a problem.
Of the doctor's
and they said,
face.
You're diabetic. Yeah. They said, you're diabetic. And when they said I'm diabetic, it's funny how when certain words come into your mind, how you get this reversal of, where did I hear the word before? And I remember, I recollected the first time that I heard that was when my friend's mother was sick and she was type 2 diabetic. And she said, Linda, the sugar get me. Yeah. And when she said, Linda, the sugar get me, when she passed away a few months later, that was through diabetes. And at the funeral, that's when I found out it was diabetes. And the second time is when my cousin Ken, who was type 1 diabetic, he told me his story, how he became diabetic. And I thought to myself, wow. So those are the two first times I heard about diabetes. But in my case, this the two main ones is type 1 diabetic and type 2 diabetic. My one was a lifestyle change. yeah,
Mm.
for type 2 diabetes. My blood sugars was high in my system. So that was me. So I asked my doctor, how did I become type 2 diabetic? They said, through your lifestyle. Yeah. What do you mean lifestyle? They said the food you're eating, the pasta, the rice, the potatoes, the fizzy drinks, the snacking, the biscuits, all those things that you're doing cause you to be type 2 diabetic, your blood sugar's high. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, okay. So the first thing that they'd done, they went for medication for me. Medication. They said, we've got to put you on medication. I said, what medication? They said, something to reduce your blood sugars. And I'm thinking to myself, you know something? I've never been on any form of medication in my life. I've never been hospitalized. I've never been sick to the extent to I have to need anything. And I thought to myself, I don't really want to take anything. And I remember my cousin Ken, who was type 1 diabetic, he said, Lyndon, if you become diabetic, don't take the medication because there are side effects to it. I think to myself, wow, I don't want to be sick with anything else. I want to deal with this. So I said to my doctor, I want to try to reverse this without any medication. And they said, listen, I don't recommend it, but we're going to give you 3 weeks, yeah, and come back, we do another HbA1c blood test with you. So I thought to myself, okay, Lyndon, this is what you need to do. Number one, you need to cut down on your carbohydrates, your pasta, rice, potatoes, your fizzy drinks, your mango juice, my ginger beer. I said, no, all of that with overnight, I just cut down. That's my
Sure.
choice, yeah. I'm going to make a declaration now, yeah, that I'm not a medical person, I'm not a nutritionist, nothing like that, yeah, okay. And if you want to try to do something what I do, check with your doctor first before
That's
you do
very
anything,
important.
yeah. Because I made a decision for my body. My friend Valma says, Lyndon, your body is your temple. So what I put in it is my choice, yeah. So from that day, I started to cut down on all carbohydrates. Overnight, I stopped. Every 22 seconds, somebody loses a lower limb through diabetes, through a toe or a feet or a leg, yeah? Every 6 seconds, somebody dies from diabetes, yeah, okay? I was self-employed, yeah? If I'm sick and I don't work, I don't earn. So that was a motivation factor for me to say, okay, do something about it, not
Sure.
tomorrow, but today,
Lyndon, I
yeah?
want to kind
And
of
with,
just, sorry to cut, I just want to kind of bring some things to the fore. You've made some really, really important points about the fact that all of these things were happening to you for a long period of time and
yes,
you didn't really do anything about it. And then when you found out about it, one of the things you said, I can't tell my wife I need to deal with this. I just want to talk about reflectively now, retrospectively, what do you think about the importance of us addressing things that don't seem right and also sharing with our loved ones things that don't feel right? What do you think about that now?
I think it was a big mistake on my part. On my part, it's a very big mistake not telling my wife, because even my good friend Errol McKellar, when he told his wife about his prostate, yeah, issues, his wife was on his side. When I told my wife, she was on my side. You
Yeah,
know, she started to book the appointments. Errol's wife started to book the appointments for her. My wife started to look at things for me to start eating healthier, encouraging me, supporting me. You know, and sometimes we think because you're living with a person, you know them, sometimes there's a different side to a person we just don't know until something happens and then it comes out. So I'm
absolutely.
saying to a lot of guys out there, trust your partner, trust your wife, whatever it is, and just talk to them. And if they want to help you on your journey, they will help you.
And if you're not feeling well, what would your advice be?
Talk to somebody, go
Talk to
go
somebody.
get help, seek advice, yeah, be it for yourself, be it medically, whatever it is, you know.
Okay. So, Lyndon, we've got a question in the chat. Let's just find out from Shez. Shez, do you want to make yourself live? Let's find out if it's for Lyndon directly or whether it's for a conversation later on. So over to Shez.
Thank you, Natasha. The question really is to Lyndon. It says, what are the long-term risks of having diabetes?
Long-term risks, losing your arms, losing your legs, yeah, you could even die, kidneys, heart, all these things affect it. You could use your vision as well, okay? I found out about the retinopathy test that they do, which checks the veins in your eyes. I knew that diabetes can affect that. So I started to look at products or vitamins or supplements or foods that helps with the eyes, like green vegetables. Yeah, there's a supplement called lutein as well. Okay, these are the things that you got to think about. And the major effect of diabetes, if you can't perform, you can't earn. It's a simple fact. You know, especially a self-employed person. You know, and if you're diabetic and you're not feeling well, it's going to lead on to something else. It just doesn't stop there. You know,
Absolutely.
blood clots as well. It leads to blood clot as well. It does. The effects is when I seriously look back, I was reading my book not too long ago again. You know, not that I didn't read it before, so I lived that life. I started to cry because I realized what I was doing and what I was going through, and it was so wrong. And if I continued on that journey, I don't think I'd even be here today. Seriously.
So Lyndon,
because I was getting bigger and bigger.
Lyndon, you are amazing, and we should really have given you 2 hours. But as we don't have 2 hours, I'm sure there'll be another opportunity at some point that we can bring you back. But don't leave the call. Do stay with us, because there might be some time at the end where somebody who's joined the call has something that they would like to ask you. So guys, I want you to use your reaction buttons like this and give the fabulous inspired diabetic Lyndon Wissart a round of applause. We might get you back towards the end to tell us kind of how you overcame, because I know you have a bigger story. But in the meantime, do stay with us, and thank you ever so much. That was marvelous.
Can
My
I
pleasure.
speak?
Thank
Can
you
I
very
ask
much.
a question? Can I ask a question?
I can't see who that is, but okay, if you're very succinct with your question, go ahead.
Marcia, you're on mute. If you're going to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, yes. We Caribbeans, we've been here for a long time, since the 40s. I suppose that the reason why it's mostly Caribbeans on the chat is that it's probably a friend who set it up, and then that friend will pass it on to maybe most of the friends that they know. I'm just looking now at a question that somebody asked, you know, why are they mainly Caribbeans on the chat? So, but my question is that we've been here for a long time now. Why is it that Caribbeans are always the ones that are the main target as being the carriers of type 2 diabetes, when we know that we have learned, you know, the rules, you know, we know what to eat, we know what to avoid, but, you know, why is this sweet tooth still amongst us? Because there's ways of going around it. I think after so many years, we must have learned a few lessons.
Okay, so Master, thank you for your question. I'm going to ask that we refer that to Reginald O'Loughlin, who's coming on a bit later in the call,
Okay.
and we'll hopefully have some more answers to that question. I guess why people aren't learning, I think it's a question we probably need to ask ourselves individually and collectively, why we're still doing the same thing. But maybe Reginald O'Loughlin will have an answer to that. But we do need to move on. So thank you very much. We are going to come back to those questions. Reginald is on the call now. We've got a 5-minute interlude. We're going to invite Natasha, who is going to talk to us about insurance and healthcare. So I do want everyone to just say thank you to Lyndon. We're just going to say goodbye to him for now. And I'm just trying to find Natasha, who I'm going to pin. So Lyndon, thank you ever so much. Let me unpin you and allow you to go back to your seat, your virtual seat, and we'll be back with you later. So it's also important to have some information which Natasha is going to bring to us now. So I'd like you to welcome to our virtual stage, Natasha Carayol from Insurance Angels. Natasha, over to you. You've got a nice 5-minute slot, so I'm going to hand over to you and take back once you've finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Natasha Carayol, and I am an FCA regulated financial advisor, and I specialise in insurances. Now, within our community, I've noticed that a lot of us don't really look into these things, not realising the power of insurance, especially given that we are more susceptible to be diagnosed with things like diabetes, high blood pressure, etc., because of our diets. So it's really important that if you have been diagnosed with something like diabetes, that you put something in place if you haven't already. Now, it's a common conception that you can't get insurance because you have diabetes, but actually, as somebody who works with all companies within the UK who provide these products, there are options for you. And listening to what Lyndon said, I think it's even resonated even more that what I do is very important for our people. Now, if you suffer with diabetes, it means that you're more susceptible to be hospitalized. There's risks of things like kidney failure, strokes, heart attacks, and so forth. And insurance safeguards you from these things. It can't stop it, but it can provide you with financial support in the event that you were diagnosed with other things surrounding your diabetes. So there are 4 pillars of life that we should have in place as a people. The first one is life insurance, so that if we do pass away prematurely as a result of our diagnosis, our family that we support have financial support. It pays out a lump sum of cash upon death or terminal illness. It also provides funds for things like funerals, and we are the biggest nation to have GoFundMes to support our funerals rather than actually supporting them ourselves. That's one thing that's really important. And the second thing is having some form of critical illness cover in place means that if you do suffer a long-term effect from your diabetes, e.g. kidney failure, it will provide you with a lump sum of cash, which means that you can't stop the fact that you may need a replacement kidney or that you're on dialysis, but you've got money to sustain yourself whilst you are healing, whilst you are going through that experience. As Lyndon rightly said, if you're diagnosed with diabetes and you have some bad days where you have to take time off, if you're self-employed or you don't get any sick pay from your workplace, you can actually put a sick pay in place for yourself, a personal sick pay, which is called income protection. So if you do have to take time out to heal or to look after yourself, you're still receiving your own personal sick pay, so you can pay your bills, you can eat, you can survive on a daily basis. These are the kind of things that as a people we need to be thinking about more, because it means that we don't go into the red when we're suffering, which then makes our lives worse because we're worrying about money rather than healing. And we can heal in peace knowing that our bills, which will always come, will be paid, that we can potentially access life-saving treatment. And also with these kind of insurance products, they provide assistance in your daily life, such as counselling, support, somebody to talk to, because you may be going through this alone. So as an insurance advisor, I would definitely say if you haven't got anything in place, there is always something there for you. If you guys can get in contact with me, I can provide you with a personalised plan. Whether you have insurance or not, diabetes or a long-term illness, there is always something out there for you to provide you with support daily, but also later on in life, because it's all about long-term life planning. So as an insurance angel, I go out into my community and just explain these things in greater detail so that you can safeguard yourself, your family, and ensure that you sustain your lifestyle, whether or not you are diagnosed with diabetes. And that's me. So if you want to get in contact,
thank you.
No problem.
That's amazing. That's really helpful. I would like you to put your details in the chat so that people can get hold of you, contact telephone number or web address, because that's really important. Coming up shortly in the chat, we will also have the contact details for the SKANLA Association. But I also want to draw your attention to the chat now, because in the chat, we didn't even have time with the fabulous Lyndon to talk about his amazing book. He is an author. So please check the chat for how you can get a copy of his amazing book. So if you could now join me, find your reactions, a big round of applause for Natasha as we say thank you, and we unpin you and return you to your virtual seat.
Thank you.
We were quite privileged actually, because I want to say thank you to Irene Lawrence, who's on the call, who's over in the fabulous islands of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we were contacted and linked together with Reginald, and so I'm really excited and I hope he's prepping and clearing his throat, because I'm about to welcome him now to the virtual stage, and for him to join us so we can hear about his experience as a medical professional, and also the work that he does currently in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So Reginald, I believe it's good afternoon for where you are. It's good evening where we are, but you are very welcome. Thank you for joining St. Kitts and Nevis London Association. They're an amazing team and they've put this whole event together. It is our absolute pleasure to invite you to the stage. So just to begin with, Reginald, if you may, just tell us a little. Oh, he's taken a call. We'll just give him a.
Yes, pleasant good afternoon.
Pleasant good afternoon to you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear us clearly? Can you hear me?
Oh, very clearly, very clearly. I've been following for the last 25-30 minutes.
Thank you so much.
I did hear Lyndon, and he,
how did you find?
I did hear Lyndon's presentation. It was quite interesting.
Yeah,
and I did hear the last presenter. And so I'm pleased to be here to speak a few things about what we do here on the little island of St. Kitts, the pleasant little island of St. Kitts, which hitherto has been relatively shielded from the effects of the COVID-19. And I'm speaking relatively. Now, we have on St. Kitts, the St. Kitts Diabetes Association, of which I am the public relations officer. And so since our present executive came into being, we made it our duty, our task, to set about trying to inform not only diabetics, but persons who have family members with diabetes, or persons who, of course, would just like to know more about diabetes. Because as you would recognize, based upon Lyndon's presentation, diabetes is a big thing. It's very prevalent. The world statistics coming from the International Diabetes Federation for 2019 says that you have approximately 463 million with a capital M diabetics worldwide, and the projections for 2030, ranges for 578 million. The International Diabetes Federation is a collection of diabetes associations throughout the world, approximately 240 members in various countries, including England, including, St. Kitts. And so ever so often we meet and we sit and determine and decide what's happening in diabetes, what's new, what can we bring to the table in terms of informing and educating diabetics and persons interested in diabetes.
Reginald, can I just ask you?
I'm also a medical.
Sorry, can I just ask you, do you work across the federation? Do you do work for Nevis as well, or is there a separate association there around diabetes?
No, it's the St. Kitts Diabetes Association. It's only on St. Kitts. I think there's a group in Nevis called the Nevis Renal Society, and they address diabetes issues on Nevis. But we are just a St. Kitts Diabetes Association. And like I said, the present executive of which I'm a part, we've been in place for the last 5 or 6 years. And among the activities which we try to push in order to shed more light on diabetes is that, by the way, we are an NGO. It's important for me to underscore. This is not our work. We do this as an NGO because of the significance of the problem and to bring the information to people. We all have our own separate
what an
jobs.
NGO is? What's an NGO? Can you explain that for people?
NGO is a non-governmental organization, just like the Rotary or any one of those clubs that meet and have objectives set, to address specific problems. And the Diabetes Association is an NGO of persons, who have an interest in the field. They may not only be diabetic; they may just have an interest, a family member, perhaps a neighbor, a friend, and so they've joined and using their combined powers, their combined efforts to try and spread what we call the gospel according to diabetes. That's what we refer to it as, the gospel. Because really and truly, on St. Kitts, an island with a population of approximately 45 to 50,000, we are looking at right now an estimated number of diabetics probably in excess of 3,000. And that is significant indeed. The problem we have in getting accurate numbers for diabetes in St. Kitts is that we have the public healthcare system and we have the private healthcare system.
Okay.
The public healthcare system that is run by the Ministry of Health, the government, affords for people to go free of cost, FOC, free of cost, and access treatment at the various health centers spread out around the island. But because of somewhat of a taboo attached to the diagnosis of diabetes, there are lots of persons who prefer not to go to a government clinic where they think their information will become public knowledge, particularly amongst the males,
Reginald,
So
can I ask you about that? Because there was some allusion to that as part of one of the questions. Why is it that if diabetes is affecting such large numbers, and although Lyndon at the time had never heard of it, I think there are people that have heard of diabetes. I guess we don't have a full understanding, but what do you think the reason is for this taboo, this not wanting to say I've got diabetes, not wanting to tell anybody? What do you think that might be about?
Well, apart from the fact that it's a sickness and is an illness, but lots of people think that once you're affected by diabetes, you're somewhat impaired. You cannot perform in many roles. You may not be able to access certain jobs. And in males in particular, they think that once they're afflicted by diabetes, they can, of course, have difficulties getting the ladies coming around.
Indeed.
Because the thinking is that it may affect their ability to perform and to entertain the fairer sex. So lots of guys.
Is that true though? Is that true?
Well, actually, it is true to a certain extent, especially if diabetes is not well managed. And Lyndon did allude to it in terms of the potential complications of diabetes, because it is well known that diabetes affects the two major entities, the nerves and the blood vessels. And depending on which area of the body those nerves and or blood vessels are affected, then you have the advanced complications. So if we start from the foot coming up and you have damage, injury to the nerves and blood vessels, you see lots of amputations. If you have the damage to the blood vessels in the pelvic area, you can have impotence. That is what men are, so scared about and not wanting people to know about their diabetic status. You go a little higher to the kidneys and you have damage to blood vessels in the kidney, leading to kidney failure, what we refer to as nephropathy. You go a little higher, the heart. You can have heart issues. You can have eye issues with retinopathy, Lyndon referred to, which can lead to blindness. And in the brain, you have strokes and a variety of other conditions, blood vessel conditions in the brain. So, and these are all complications of uncontrolled diabetes. And I'm glad that Lyndon preceded me, because he was able to demonstrate by virtue of his presentation that with lifestyle changes, we recognize that they are what you call modifiable factors contributing to diabetes and its complications, and non-modifiable factors.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Modifiable factors, well, that's what I'm going to go into.
Yeah, thank you.
The modifiable factors, those are things which you yourself can do something about. And we heard clearly from Lyndon, you got to change the way you're eating. You can't continue along the lines of overburdening your little pancreas with all this amount of starchy foods, sugar producing foods, high sugar content foods, because obviously that pancreas can take so much and no more. You can definitely start doing some exercise, because exercise helps to exercise the muscles uses as a fuel, the blood sugar. So when you exercise, you're actually helping to keep those sugar levels under some degree of control. You're overweight, that obese body, unfortunately, fat makes it difficult for insulin, that critically important hormone. Fat makes it difficult for insulin to work effectively. So just by working on that obese state, especially if you have abdominal obesity, many studies have shown that increased abdominal girth, and most experts would say a female with an abdominal girth exceeding 36 and a male with an abdominal girth exceeding 40 inches, those people are at high risk for problems such as diabetes. So I'm sure some people are reaching for their tapes right now.
They are. Can you see the look on their faces where they're horrified?
And Linda did allude to his abdominal changes, the sizes in his abdomen. which of course was a very relevant notation that he made back then. And of course, that might have been one of the factors that caused him to get on board with doing the right thing. So the St. Kitts Diabetes Association, we try to organize meetings every 3 months where we choose a specific aspect of diabetes and we get an expert in the particular area to address it. And we invite all and sundry. We do not limit it to diabetics. We invite diabetics, friends of diabetics, family members, and persons interested on a Sunday afternoon, because most people in St. Kitts do not work on Sundays here. And so we think we can get a bigger crowd. We even go as far as to send a bus around the island, paid for by the St. Kitts Diabetes Association from our meager funds, to try and encourage people to attend. And believe it or not, we do not get large crowds. The thinking is that if we have done everything in our power to increase the chances of one attending, we still do not get people coming in drones. But when we do get, we get the older folk, who are, I guess, less moved by taboo at status. We do not get those younger ones. We do not get the males. And those are the ones we would love to have. Because in my medical practice, and I have a small medical private practice, practically every week I see a new diabetic. And believe it or not, this morning, my first patient was a gentleman with a blood sugar that exceeded 600 milligrams per deciliter, which in England, that is over 33 millimoles per liter. And that is high, that is extremely high. As a matter of fact, most of the little machines that we use to test from the finger, the prick that Lyndon spoke about, most of them can read up to approximately 30 millimoles per liter or up to 600 thereabouts. But when it exceeds, those machines will only say high. And when that is the case, that person is in a potential danger zone, because you can have certain chemical changes going on in your body, leading to the production of what we call ketones, which can be detrimental and dangerous for the human body. So situations and cases of these nature usually should be stabilized in a hospital environment. And that is what that particular person right now is undergoing. They're being stabilized at the hospital, at the local hospital. Of course, I had to really coax him, I had to force him, I had to coerce him, I had to practically beat him into going, because one, he's male, and so, and two, as Lyndon will tell you, diabetes doesn't hurt. You get some discomforts, yes, but you always attribute it to other things other than the root cause. You try and avoid the actual diagnosis. There's no pain really associated with diabetes. And when you start to have
Reginald, sorry to cut you. Can I just ask you, how will one know if we haven't got a tape measure and we're in denial? What are some of the indicators for emergency to go, I might be diabetic? What are some of the indicators that you can tell us about that may not have been mentioned as yet?
Well, the thing about it, once you have extreme cases of diabetes, that is to say very high blood sugars, is usually associated with a sudden noticing of an increased frequency of peeing. And if you're accustomed to sleeping through the night without peeing, and suddenly you're peeing 2 or 3 or 4 times during the night, and you haven't really increased your liquid intake, that should be suspicious. But believe it or not, this gentleman had that, and he didn't pay any attention. He just assumed, well, I drink plenty of water. But then again, that's a second potential symptom, what you call polydipsia, that is to say, drinking increased quantities of water. And he attributed that to the weather being warm. So he was always giving himself an explanation for each of the symptoms. He was feeling generally fatigued, and high blood sugars generally make you feel a little fatigued, but he put that down to working hard. So that's what I'm saying. There are no specific symptoms that you can say that is diabetes. You have to really be noticing what your body how it normally performs, and notice that there's a difference and go and get it checked. That is why it's always important to go and do that little annual check, because even in persons who have mildly elevated blood sugars, they would probably be not experiencing the increased urination, nor the increased drinking of fluids, water, nor the fatigue, which I was speaking about. So,
Reginald,
but
you've
these
been
are some of the
amazing.
things.
We're going to take some questions now. So I'm going to hand over to my trusted assistant, Shez, who's doing a marvelous job. Shez, I'm just going to put some light on so everybody can see me. But can you call out if there are any questions?
Okay, one of the questions first was, will the recording of this, can it be placed in the chat room, or where can people find the recording? That would be for you. And then a question, I believe, which would be for Reginald, is how does the diabetes affect your pelvis? Can you please say that again?
Yes, as I did say, the basis of diabetes injury is what is happening to blood vessels and nerves, critically important. In the pelvis, you have a variety of nerves and blood vessels that control the sex organs, the male sex organ, obviously. And once you're going to be getting changes in the flow of blood, that blood through the pelvic area into the sex organs, it would be manifested in the form of impotence in males in particular. So that is a concern more so for males. In females, it's less known, it's a less known phenomenon for effects on the pelvic area, more so on the kidneys, of course, and on the feet, like everybody else. But I mentioned the pelvis more so in relation to the males because those are the ones who invariably would be noting the impotence factor and at some stage reporting it, of course, in a private setting. Let me give you some quick statistics. In our government setting, in our government health centers, for the last 3 to 5 years, you were looking at approximately 1,200 to 1,400 attendees at those clinics. And believe it or not, 75 to 80% of those attendees were female. And that does not in any way indicate the ratio of male to female diabetes, because it's pretty close 1-to-1. Most of those other males were not attending government clinics for reasons just as these, which I mentioned a while ago, because they just don't want their business, as we call it in St. Kitts, to be, public knowledge.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions in the chat for you. The next one is itching a symptom as well?
Itching is not a typical symptom. It's not a typical symptom, even though people quite often do ask. There's some people who may note it, but it's definitely not a typical symptom associated with high blood sugar. Remember, I said that diabetes is a silent killer and invariably does not have a classic symptomatic presentation, which can be identified as that is diabetes. But if you know your body and you notice the change in your peeing pattern, your drinking pattern, the fatigue, etc., then that's already reason to suspect something is going wrong. Another factor that is of importance, if you also come from a family with diabetes. I think Lyndon did mention that one of his parents was diabetic. So therefore he had lots of symptoms, which along with his family history, the genetics for type 2 diabetes tends to have a genetic component. So those are the things which should cause persons to go and get that checked out.
Yeah, can I interject there a second?
Sure.
In the UK, they say thrush or genital itching is one of the symptoms. They put it down in
Yes.
their literature. So, and
I've had, yeah.
I'm gonna, because we're having an open conversation here, I'm gonna confess that I had it. Yeah. And I'm gonna put it in a simple fact like this. I've been with my wife for 20 years. Okay. I've never slept with any other woman, no other partner. I've been clean all my life. And I had this genital itching and I couldn't understand where it come from. And when I was diagnosed and I looked up the symptoms and I found out this was it. And at that time, I was dealing with it in my own way. I was doing my own little testing, my little laboratory to try and get rid of it. Because that's all I was doing at the time. And there's many men out there who's got the same thing and I've met them as well. So I talk about it, frankly, when I do events at a certain time with certain people, because they are suffering out there and they may confuse the two with sexually transmitted disease and the diabetic side of thrush. So you may be treating something for something, but it may not be that. It may be something else. So it's very complicated, this one. It really is.
There's one more
That is
question.
so true. That is so true. Yeah. what I can add here is that definitely there are some patients I've diagnosed certain women who present with vaginal candidiasis not responding to the regular treatment, which is vaginal thrush, and athlete's foot, which is another type similar to what you get with candidiasis, that's between the toes. There's some persons who, after trying to get rid of athlete's foot, they present only to find out that the basis of their problem is diabetes. But why I said it is not a classic presentation, the itching, is that many persons initially, as being mild diabetics, you know, they're borderline, they would not be noting that particular symptom. Definitely, once you get into the range of those high sugars, then the jock itch, which probably Lyndon might have experienced, that's the one around the testicles, you know, quite often you see it in the males, you know, that sometimes would cause males to wonder what could be going on. It's not responding to those little ointments and those Whitfield ointments and stuff. You know, what can be going on? So definitely, you know, the itching, like I say, is not an initial presenting symptom, but with time and with poor control of your blood sugar,
it all goes. I just want to add to that, because for all the diabetics out there, especially type 2 diabetics, I reversed my diabetes in 105 days. From 92 down to 41, you know. And I tell you the truth, when I done it, my body changed, my mind changed, everything changes so quick. You feel so much better, you have a better life. And I don't understand why so many people out there, they want to stay diabetic, especially when it's type 2. But I tell you, for all you people out there worldwide, if you're type 2 diabetic, it's a lifestyle, what you put in your mouth, you need to do something, not tomorrow, today.
That's so true.
Today.
That's so very true.
Today, because it just it's a mindset.
Sorry, there's can I just go to the questions in the chat room first, because there's one in the chat room and someone's got their hand up. Then we'll come to you, sir. We won't forget. The question in the chat room, which came directly, is what is the difference between being insulin resistant and diabetic?
Well, insulin resistance forms one of the components of type 2 diabetes. Diabetes has been described as having the type 1, where you have an absolute absence of diabetes, of insulin, and the type 2, where you have the phenomenon of insulin resistance, where you're producing insulin, but your cells, your body is not able to respond to it. And those are the people who, at some stage, they may be, of course, recommended to make significant changes to their lifestyle, and some of them even would be prescribed metformin, which I think is what Lyndon alluded to during his presentation. So
somebody had asked about that metformin. Is it good? That was also a question.
Well, put it this way, once a drug is being tested by the Food and Drug Administration and it's available for use, I can't say it is bad. You have to recognize that any drug has potential side effects. Metformin is supposed to improve that particular phenomenon, the insulin resistance phenomenon. And so persons who are type 2 diabetic, it has been described by the IDF and the scientists associated with the International Diabetes Federation as one of the leading medications for the starting of treatment of people with type 2 diabetes. It's very commonly used in many, many persons. And I would say it's a relatively safe drug, but you do have some persons who may display an allergic reaction to it. Some people notice increased bowel activity because it does increase bowel activity. And there was one study which even showed that by virtue of its increased bowel activity, it may be associated with a lower risk of colon cancer, another major headache in the world of healthcare. Wow. And I see somebody's asking about diabetic neuropathy. No, neuropathy, which means damage to the nerves. Let me give an answer to that by virtue of an example. When the nerves, which are used to pick up sensations, when you touch anything, when you walk on anything, if it's hot or cold, you can discern that temperature difference by virtue of the nerves in your feet or your hands by virtue of touching. If neuropathy were to occur as a result of diabetes, many diabetic persons walk on sharp objects, don't know that they would have injured the sole of their feet and sustain an injury. That injury gets infected. They still don't know. And when they do notice that foot is already filled with what we call inflammation, for all you kitchens who understand the term, filled with pus. And at that time, simultaneously, there may be some damage to the blood vessels, angiopathy. So you have a foot which is not, the nerves are not working, the blood vessels are not working, you don't have good circulation to get to that spot to heal that affected area. So the prescription of antibiotics would really be of no sense. And quite often those persons lose a foot, they get amputated. So that is the significance of the neuropathy. You're losing the feeling. I can recall personally seeing one lady who had a very high fever and her family did not know what was the cause of her fever. When I looked at her middle toe on one foot, it was filled with pus on the underside. And I held on to that toe and I was talking to her and squeezing with all my might. And she was feeling no pain. That was a classic case of advanced neuropathy. And so she ended up losing actually that toe because no feeling, the circulation to the toe was very poor and it would have been impossible to save that toe. It was already more or less gone. And not removing it could have resulted in that infection spreading higher up the foot, resulting in what we call a PKA, a below knee amputation, or even in a worst case scenario, an above knee amputation, an AKA.
Thank you, Reginald. Let's go back to Shez.
Beverly had her hand up and then Sherwin.
All I was, am I on? Yeah, all I was going to say was going way back with Reginald. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this session. And when we mentioned about the itching, Reginald, what my symptom was actually itching all over my body, which was unusual for me. And as a matter of fact, I was due to fly out to St. Kitts like the following week, and I didn't want to go over there scratching myself. And I went to the GP that same day. And as soon as I told him, he said, go for a blood test that day. And the next morning they called and said, I was pre-diabetic. And then I started to Google everything. So all I was going to say was it may not be a common symptom, but it is one of the symptoms. And that was my symptom. Otherwise, I'd have been none the wiser. So I just wanted to share that as well. I've also been on metformin, and I can actually say I'm down to 45 now. So I've still got a good way to go to get to 42. I'm from 2 metformin down to 1, and that's through dietary, just diet and exercising. So like Lyndon said earlier on, you can reverse it, you can bring it down, and you've got to aim for 42, but I'm getting there. I'm on the right track. I'm down to 45. So I've gone back under pre-diabetic. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you both. That's amazing.
The problem is that Caribbean people love to eat. They love their mouth. You understand? When we have our functions, we have all of these bad things, all the things that Lyndon spoke about in his preparatory presentation. We love all those hamburgers and the cakes and so on, and the milkshakes. And it's really difficult to have people exclude all of those, even though it is highly recommended. But it's difficult. And so you find the International Diabetes Federation made some strong recommendations to various governments to introduce taxation on sugar-sweetened beverages. And I think that is in place in England, it's in place in Barbados, it has been recommended here in St. Kitts, because we figure if we can't beat them, if we can't beat them, we have to join them in some way, but put the taxes in place to treat the complications when they arise, because the numbers are increasing. The numbers are significantly increasing for diabetes.
I also think smaller portions as well helps now, because it's just a mindset. Because I used to always eat in a bigger portion, bigger plate. Now I eat in a smaller plate, and I'm still satisfied. You know,
I think that's
exactly.
Well,
we try to coin various sayings and acronyms to match everything, and to match what Lyndon just said. We contend that you need to eat to suit your need, not your greed. Most people, when they go to a function, they have the 6-inch plate, the 8-inch plate, and the 10-inch plate, and they go for the 10-inch
greed
because they go for the greed, satisfying the need. And then the St. Kitts Diabetes Association, we have the acronym TEAM. We contend to be able to successfully manage your diabetes and avoid the complications of diabetes. You have to follow the acronym TEAM. And TEAM stands for 1, test regularly. Once you can test your blood sugar, you can have an idea where you're at and what you can have to eat or drink during the course of that day. The first E stands for exercise. You must exercise regularly. And when I say exercise, I don't mean on PlayStation with your thumbs and fingers, nor on the telephone, but rather doing some walking, playing some games, skipping, dancing, even putting on your music and having some dancing. Exercise is critically important in lowering blood sugars. The second E is eating wisely. Eating, and Lyndon spoke at length about that, is very important, because once you can change the way you eat, you definitely can bring about significant improvements. And the M is for the medication, for those who would have to be on medication. The type 1s would, unfortunately, they need the insulin, so would definitely be there. And there are a number of type 2s, so unfortunately, they have to still need the assistance of whether it be the metformin, the glycerides, whatever other medication is prescribed. But if we can make these necessary changes with the lifestyle changes, those modifiable factors, we can definitely do a good job in turning things around.
Listen, guys, you have been amazing, and we probably should have booked 3 hours. There's so much more to say, but I'm going to hand back very quickly to my trusted assistant, who's doing an amazing job. Shez, I think there's someone else that wants to ask a question. Am I right?
Yeah, Sherwin was next.
Yeah, and I'll be quite quick. Thanks very much to Reginald and Lyndon for the very comprehensive presentations, very informative. I was born in Trinidad. My parents are Barbados. I'm clearly Afro-Caribbean. I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and I'm on metformin. My question is, though, which is more serious, type 2 or type 1? I tend to think type 1 is more serious, but which is the more serious of the two types of diabetes?
Yeah, we get that question all the time. Diabetes is a disease which can have all of the complications, whether it be 1 or 2. We have type 1 diabetics who have had serious complications. What is causing the problem is the high sugar levels. You understand, these high sugar levels can be brought about by the type 1 case in the absence of insulin, or the type 2 case with the ineffective functioning of insulin. So diabetes on the whole, unfortunately, is a dangerous disease, whether it be type 1, whether it be type 2. And even those gestational diabetic ladies who during pregnancy, they show signs of diabetes, which is another category which at some stage we can address. But those are at risk for developing full-fledged diabetes after the resolution of their pregnancy. So diabetes on the whole, it is dangerous.
Should I stop eating honey? I like honey, but should I stop using honey?
Well, put it this way, that honey is a little healthier, but it is the quantities. Lyndon spoke to quantities. Quantities is important. You can't be, I heard Lyndon speaking about some quantities. Sounds like he was eating for 3 people. You understand? And that is critically important. And if you use our acronym, the team, I tell people, do not take my mouth as a Bible. My mouth is not a Bible. The doctor's mouth is not a Bible. Your testing will show you the impact of what you did and whether you did too much or too little. So when you try whatever it may be, and there's so many different things to try in terms of your plate and your cup and your glass, you do a test. Do a test 1 hour after to see how high your blood sugar is rising. And that can at least help you to juxtapose it against whatever advice you're getting from your medical practitioner. Because I would not be there all the time to see what you're eating. And most diabetics, when they cheat, they don't let anybody see. They cheat in the quietness of their home and in their kitchens. So therefore, the testing is critical. That's why we included it in our acronym, team testing. Critically important, very helpful tool to help you manage your diabetic status.
Thank you so much. That is superb. Sherwin, thank you for your question. Bev Williams, thank you also. We're almost coming to time, but I just want to introduce Shez Christopher to you, who's got some information to share as well before we start to wrap up. So Shez, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This will be a quick 2-minute. Just many of us are from the diaspora in the UK, Canada, America, wherever you are, and you have perhaps thought about getting your citizenship in St. Kitts and not being able to do it or not know how to do it. Well, the organization that I work for, we can do that for you. It's really, really simple. I've just placed a YouTube link in the chat room. So if you're interested in getting your citizenship by descent, which you can, and it's your birthright, don't lose it. It's good to have a second ID. You never know what's going to happen here. So please do contact me. You'll find my details on the link. And thank you very much, Patricia, for this amazing forum. Welcome to everybody here, especially my mum and dad from St. Kitts. Yay, a little plug there. But back over to you, host. I won't take any more of your time.
Oh, well, you know, you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to put you back to have a little bit of a rest, and I'm going to bring Natasha. I'm going to bring Natasha back to our virtual stage because we are coming to Reginald. Please do not go away. We need you to be with us. So if you can put your screen back on, thank you, because we'd love you to just stay present for a bit. So, I mean, there is just not, I don't know if I have the words to talk about just how amazing our speakers have been tonight. And the questions and your interaction has also been phenomenal. I just have to say how brilliant it is that we have spent our afternoon or our evening or our morning, wherever we are, and have come together to hear this important information that the St. Kitts and Nevis London Association has put on for us this evening. I'm going to ask, if you're not speaking, and I think it's just me speaking, if you can be on mute so that everybody can hear the closing remarks for this evening. Thank you ever so much. It's phenomenal that we have come together, both here in the UK and, of course, St. Kitts and Nevis. It's phenomenal that we have had the pleasure of hearing the inspired diabetic Lyndon Wissart. I mean, you know, guys, that story, you'll never hear it in the same way again. 10 loaves of, or 10 slices of hardo bread, 2 large pots of honey and chocolate and J2O and all of that kind of thing. I don't know that you'll hear that in one story again. So I'm just going to try and find out who's not on mute, because it's really a bit distracting. So, and Lyndon, you were very honest and you shared your story. And I know there's about another half an hour worth of your story to go. You told a phenomenal story. You were very brave and very informative. And there were some few jokes about what your mum said, pig can't smell themselves. And I think we can, some of us can relate to that. We have an understanding of what that means. So Reginald, who joined us after the event had been set to come and join us in the way that you have today, with the most amazing information told in an absolutely clear way so that we could understand it. You've opened our eyes, I'm sure, to things that we didn't know about before, or at least you have reminded us about those things that we know are happening to our bodies that we do nothing about, as has Lyndon. And, you know, you spoke very candidly about medication versus medication. You've given it back to us. It is, of course, our responsibility to deal with the situation. We've got the information. To Natasha, who's off screen at the moment, I want to say thank you so much. She's back, for sharing the information. That's really, really important. And, you know, it's been a marvelous way for me to spend my evening, I have to say to you. I'm going to repin the fabulous Shez Christopher, because I'm telling you, without her, tonight would not have gone as smoothly as it has done. And she literally stepped in at the last minute. She has been a phenomenal assistant, I'm sure you will agree. And actually, I'm just looking at doing the rest of them with her. So you've kind of walked into this position. It must be God sent, because you're here and you've done a phenomenal job. And so I want to thank you. What I want to do now, though, is I'm going to hand back to Ethne McFarlane, the chair of St. Kitts and Nevis London Association. I want to thank her and her team, to Tony, to Sonia. Oh, I can't see Clovis and Sandra, but to Clovis and Sandra as well. And so now I'm going to ask you, before we bring Ethne back, to find your reactions, and if not, use your actual hands and give a massive round of applause to Reginald O'Loughlin, Lyndon Wissart, Natasha Carayol, and the amazing Shez Christopher. Thank you all so much. You have been amazing. I'm going to return you to your seats now as we take the closing remarks from Ethne. And just bear with me for a moment as I bring her to what is called our virtual stage, because it is, of course, all virtual. And I'm going to bring her on, and we're going to allow her to close the... Oh, hold on, I think I've done something wrong there. Just bear with me. Let me just remove shares nicely. I think I've tried to rename her. So we'll remove her, and then we're going to... Oh, Ethne looks like she's pinned already, but let's...
I've done it for you.
Oh,
I did it for you.
Oh, okay. So,
Okay.
Ethne.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoy this session. I think we could have gone on for another hour, honestly.
Indeed.
Thank you, Lyndon. Very informative, very honest, very open. And I wish a lot more men were more open about their health issues. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reginald. Thank you so much for all the information you've passed on. I have to say that only about a month ago, I had a blood test for the same thing, testing my sugar, which came back normal. But just to add, all those symptoms of it, I have itching, I have fatigue, and a few other symptoms. It's just to reassure you, it's not always about diabetes, but go and get checked out anyway, because you can have symptoms that relate to other things, but go and get checked out anyway. Also, Natasha, thank you very much for your information. And Shay, thank you for stepping in. You're brilliant. Thank you, everyone. It was a lovely session, and I hope to see you all at the next one in a month's time. I believe that will be prostate cancer. Is that right, Patricia?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So on behalf of SKANLA and SKANLA's team, thank you all for attending, and spread the word. Thank you.
Thanks.
And good night.
Just to add, don't forget that the details for contacting SKANLA is in the chat. It's placed there nicely by Shares. Please make sure you get the email address so that you can contact us. Speak to the person that invited you to the Zoom, and make sure we see you next month when we talk about prostate cancer. We're also going to be talking about menopause. I haven't noticed any fans in the room, but I definitely need mine. So stay tuned in to find out what's coming up next. Let me just see if I've got one more message before I close and say thank you ever so much. So Shez says thank you to everybody, and the information for SKANLA is in the chat. Wow, what a fantastic evening. I've loved my evening. I hope it's been informative to you, and I wish you all a very, very fantastic rest of a weekend. I guess it's bye for now.
Bye.